So hi and welcome to your ENG 6301 Engineering Management. This topic discusses week 11 controlling. So what is controlling? Okay. So controlling refers to the process of ascertaining whether organizational objectives have been achieved. If not, why not? And determining what activities should be done or be taken to achieve objectives better in the future. Controlling completes the cycle of management functions. Objectives and goals that are set at the planning stage are verified as to achievement or completion at any given point in the organizing and implementing stages. So when expectations are not met at scheduled dates, corrective measures are usually undertaken. So importance of controlling. Okay, so when controlling is properly implemented, it will help the organization achieve its goals, okay, in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Okay, so deviations, mistakes, and shortcomings happen inevitably. So when they occur in the daily operations, they contribute to unnecessary expenditures, which increase the cost of producing goods and services. Proper control measures minimize the ill effects of such negative occurrences. An effective inventory control system, for instance, minimizes, if not totally eliminates, losses in inventory. Okay, so the importance of controlling may be illustrated as it is applied in a typical factory. Okay, so if the required standard daily output for individual workers is 100 pieces, okay, so all workers who do not produce the requirement are given sufficient time to improve. If no improvements are forthcoming, they are asked to resign. So these actions will help the company keep its overhead and other costs at expected levels. If no such control is made, the company will be faced with escalating production costs, which will place viability of the firm in jeopardy. Then we have these steps in the control process. The control process consists of 4 steps, namely establishing performance objectives and standards, measuring actual performance, comparing actual performance to objective and standards, and taking necessary action based on the result of the comparisons. Establishing performance objectives and standards. Examples of objectives and standards are as follows. Sales targets, which are expressed in quantity or monetary terms. Production targets, which are expressed in quantity and quality. Worker attendance, which are expressed in terms of rate of absences. Then we have the safely record, which is expressed in number of accidents for given periods. And then last, we have the supplies used, which are expressed in quantity or monetary terms for given period. Okay, so once objectives and standards are established, the measurement of performance will be facilitated. Standards differ among various organizations. Okay, in construction firms, project completion dates are useful standards. In chemical manufacturing firms, certain pollution measures from the basis for standard requirements. Then let's go to measuring actual performance. There is a need to measure actual performance so that when shortcomings occur, adjustments could be made. Okay, so the adjustments will depend on the actual findings. Okay, so the measuring tool will differ from organization to organization, as each have their own unique objectives. Okay, so some firms, for instance, will use annual growth rate as standard basis, while other firms will use some other tools like the market share approach and position in the industry. And then we have the comparing actual performance to objectives and standards. Once actual performance has been determined, this will be compared with what the organization seeks to achieve. Okay, so actual production output, for instance, will be compared with the target output. Okay, so this may be illustrated as follows. A construction firm entered into a contract with the government to construct a 100 kilometers road within 10 months. It would be then reasonable for management to expect at least 10 kilometers to be constructed every month. As such, this must be verified every month or if possible every week. Then taking necessary action. Okay, so the purpose of comparing actual performance with the desired result is to provide management with the opportunity to take corrective actions when necessary. Okay, so if in the illustration cited, the management of the construction firm found out that only 15 kilometers were finished after 2 months, then any of the following action may be undertaken. Okay, hire additional personnel, use more equipment, or require overtime. Then we have types of control. Control consists of 3 distinct types, namely feed-forward control, concurrent control, and feedback control. Then we have the types of control and their relation to operations. Okay, so you will notice here, feed-forward control is under pre-operation phase, while concurrent control is under pre-operation phase and actual operation phase. And then the feedback control is under pre-operation phase and post-operation phase. Then let's start with the feed-forward control. Okay, so when management anticipate problems and prevent occurrences, the type of control measures undertaken is called the feed-forward control. Okay, so this type of control provides assurance that the required human and non-human resources are in place before operations begin. Okay, an example is provided as follows. is that the manager of a chemical manufacturing firm makes sure that the best people are selected and hired to fill jobs. Materials required in the production process are carefully checked to detect defects. The foregoing control measures are designed to prevent wasting valuable resources. If these measures are not undertaken, the likelihood that the problems will occur is always present. Next is the concurrent control. Okay, so when operations are already ongoing and activities to detect variances are made, concurrent control is said to be undertaken. It is always possible that the deviations from standards will happen in the production process when such deviations occur. Okay, adjustments are made to ensure compliance with requirements. Information on the adjustments are also necessary inputs in the pre-operation phase. Okay, so example of activities using concurrent control are as follows. Okay, first example is the manager of a construction firm constantly monitor the progress of the company's project. When construction is behind schedule, corrective measures like the hiring of additional manpower are made. Okay, in a firm engaged in the production of distribution of water, the chemical composition of the water procured from various sources is checked thoroughly before they are distributed to the consumers. And last, the production manager of an electronics manufacturing firm inspects regularly the outputs consisting of various electronics products coming out of the production line. Then we have the feedback control. Okay, so when information is gathered about a completed activity, and in order that evaluation and steps for improvement are derived, feedback control is undertaken. Corrective actions is aimed at improving future activities are features of feedback control. Okay, so feedback control validates objectives and standards. Okay, if accomplishments consist only of a percentage of a standard requirements, the standard may be too high or inappropriate. An example of feedback control is the supervisor who discovers the continuous overtime work for factory workers lowers the quality of output. The feedback information obtained leads to some adjustment in the overtime schedule. Components of organizational control systems. Organizational control systems consist of the following: strategic plan, the long-range financial plan, the operating budget, performance appraisals, statistical reports, policies and procedures, okay, we'll start with the strategic plans. A strategic plan provides the basic control mechanism for the organization. When there are indications that activities do not facilitate the accomplishments of strategic goals, these activities are either set aside, modified, or expanded. These corrective measures are made possible with the adoption of strategic plans. And then next is the long-range financial plan. So the planning horizon differs from company to company. Engineering firms, however, require longer-term financial plans. Okay, so this is because of the long lead times needed for capital projects. So the financial plan recommends a direction for financial activities. If the goal does not appear to be where the firm is headed, the control mechanism should be made to work. Then we have the operating budget. Okay, so an operating budget indicates the expenditures, revenues, or profits planned for some future period regarding operations. The figures appearing in the budget are used as standard measurement for performance. Then we have the performance appraisals. Okay, performance appraisal measures employee performance. As such, it provides employees with a guide on how to do their jobs better in the future. Okay, so performance appraisals also functions as effective checks on new policies and programs. Okay, so for example, if a new equipment has been acquired for the use of an employee, it would be useful to find out if it had a positive effect on his performance. Next, statistical reports. Statistical reports pertain to those that contain data on various developments within the firm. Among the information which may be found in a statistical report pertains to the following: laboratory efficiency rates, quality control rejects, accounts payable, sales reports, accidental reports, power consumption report. Policies and procedures. Policies refer to the framework within which the objectives must be pursued. A procedure is a plan that describes the exact series of actions to be taken in a given situation. An example of policy: whenever two or more activities compete for the company's attention, the client takes priority. Okay, an example of a procedure. Procedure in the purchase of equipment. Okay, so the concerned manager forwards a request for purchase to the purchasing officer. The purchasing officer forwards the request to top management for approval. So when approved, the purchasing officer makes a canvas of the request or requested item. If disapproved, the purchasing officer returns the form to the requesting manager. The purchasing officer negotiates with the lowest complying bidder. Next, strategic control systems. So to be able to assure the accomplishment of the strategic objectives of the company, strategic control systems become necessary. These systems consist of the following: financial analysis, financial ratio analysis. Okay, let's start with the financial analysis. Okay, so the success of most organizations depend heavily on its financial performance. It is just fitting that certain measurements of financial performance be made so that whatever deviations from standards are found out, corrective actions may be introduced. Okay, so a review of financial statements will reveal important details about the company's performance. The balance sheets contains information about the company's assets, liabilities, and capital accounts. Comparing the current balance sheets with the previous ones may reveal important changes, which in turn provide clues to performance. Okay, so the income statement contains information about the company's gross income, expenses, and profits. When also compared with previous year's income statements, changes in figures will help management determine if it did well. The next is the financial ratio analysis. Okay, so financial ratio analysis is a more elaborate approach used in controlling activities. Under this method, one account appearing in the financial statement is paired with another to constitute a ratio. The result will be compared with a required norm, which is usually related to what other companies in the industry have achieved, or what the company has achieved in the past. When deviations occur, explanations are sought in preparation for whatever action is necessary. Okay, so financial ratios may be categorized in the following types. A, we have the liquidity ratios. Okay, so these ratios assesses the ability of a company to meet its current obligations. The following ratios are important indicators of liquidity. Okay, we have current ratio. This shows the extent to which current assets of the company can cover its current liabilities. The formula, current ratio is equals to current assets over current liabilities. The next one is the acid test ratio. Okay, so this measure of the firm's ability to pay off short-term obligations with the use of current assets and without relying on the sale of inventories. The formula, acid test ratio is equals to the current asset minus inventories over current liabilities. And then we have the financial ratios may be categorized in the following types. Okay, additional, we have the B, efficiency ratios. Okay, so these ratios shows how effectively certain assets or liabilities are being used in the productions or in the production of goods and services. Among the more common efficiency ratios are inventory turnover ratio. Okay, so this ratio measures the number of times an inventory is turned over or sold each year. This is computed as follows. Okay, inventory turnover ratio is equals to cost of goods sold over the inventory. Then we have the fixed asset turnover. Okay, so this ratio is used to measure utilization of the company's investment in its fixed assets, such as its plant and equipment. The formula used is as follows. Fixed asset turnover is equals to net sales over net fixed assets. Okay, so financial ratios may be categorized into the following types. Financial leverage ratios. This is a group of ratios designed to assess the balance of financing obtained through debt and equity sources. Okay, we have the debt to total assets ratio. This ratio shows how much of the firm's assets are financed by debt. The formula, debt to total assets ratio is equals to total debt over total assets. Then we have the times interest earned ratio. Okay, so this ratio measures the number of times the earnings before interest and taxes cover or exceed by using the following formula. Times interest earned ratio is equals to profit before tax plus interest expense over interest expense. Okay, so in financial ratios again, may be categorized in the following types, and this is our D. Profitability ratios. These ratios measure how much operating income or net income a company is able to generate in relation to its assets, owner's equity, and sales. Okay, we have the profit margin ratio. Compares the net profit to the level of sales. And the formula, profit margin ratio is equals to net profit over net sales. Next, we have the identifying control problems. Okay, recognizing the need for control is one thing. Okay, so actually implementing it is another. When operations become complex, the engineer manager must consider useful steps in controlling. Okay, so Kreitner mentioned 3 approaches. Number 1, executive reality check. Number 2, comprehensive internal audit. And number 3, general checklist of symptoms of inadequate. Okay, let's start with executive reality check. So the engineer manager of a construction firm could, once in a while, perform the work of one of his laborers. In doing so, he will be able to see things that he never sees inside the confines of his air-conditioned office. Because the said action exposed the engineer manager to certain realities, the term executive reality check is very appropriate. Next, we have the comprehensive internal audit. Okay, so an internal audit is one undertaken to determine the efficiency and effectivity of the activities of an organization. Okay, so among many aspects of operations within the organization, a small activity that is not done right may continue to be unnoticed until it snowballs into a full-blown problem. Okay, an example. Okay, an example is the resignation of an employee serving the company for 15 years. After 1 week, another employee with 10 years of service also resigned. Both were from the same department. If another week, a third employee is resigning, a full investigation is in order. Even if the source of the problem is identified, it may already have caused considerable loss to the organization. A comprehensive internal audit aims to detect dysfunction in the organization before they bring bigger troubles to management. Then we have these symptoms of inadequate control. So if a comprehensive internal audit cannot be availed of for some reason, the use of a checklist for symptoms of inadequate control may be used. Kreitner has listed some of the common symptoms as follows. An unexplained decline in revenues and profits, a degradation of service, customer complaints, employee dissatisfaction, complaints, grievances, turnover, cash shortages caused by bloated inventories or delinquent accounts receivable, idle facilities or personnel, disorganized operations, workflow bottlenecks, excessive paperwork. Excessive costs, and last, evidence of waste and inefficiency, okay, scrap or rework. Okay, so it must be noted that behind every symptoms is a problem waiting to be solved. Unless this problem is clearly identified, no effective solution may be derived. Nevertheless, problems are easily recognized if adequate control measures are in place. Okay, that will be all for today, class. Thank you and have a nice day.